ready.
Act of courage. Take 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
This is the story of the making of an album. It's jazz, and it's called The Dancing Calvinist. I know that's kind of offbeat, but soon the composer will tell us how he came up with it. Within the collection of new tunes in this album is an 8-song cycle called Lux Aeterna, Light Eternal, a jazz requiem. I've played jazz on the radio since my college days, and I've done interviews with jazz artists and photographed them since then too. Seeing musicians in concert is always exciting, of course, but watching and listening to their artistry in the recording studio, well, you feel as if you've been invited to something sublime, intimate, and very special. To experience the players playing at their work or working at their playing, hearing how new music comes together off the page for the first time, seeing the joy that comes from collaboration, or noting a quick grimace when a note or 7 go wrong, wondering at the genius who can fix just about any miscue by pushing a button. That's part of it. We're watching jazz pianist Bill Carter, the composer of all these tunes, and the Presbybop Quintet.
Well, we're assembling at Red Rock Studio today to start working on our next album. And we're going to play an instrumental tune or two first to kind of get those things under our fingers. And then we're going to start working on Lux Aeterna, our jazz requiem, to kind of lay down the pieces of that the choir can sing to. So that's what's cooking. Everybody's here. Everybody's in good spirits. Anticipation is high, and we're ready to go. We have the Presbybop Quintet. That's Jeff Kellam on trumpet and French horn, Michael Carbone on a full arsenal of saxophones, Tony Marino on bass, Ron Vincent on drums, and I'm going to play a little piano, hopefully as little as possible.
Who's this guy?
Kent Heckman, who is our brilliant genius engineer here at Red Rock Studio.
Adding their voices to the jazz requiem is an outstanding chorus from Northeast Pennsylvania, the Lyric Consort.
We relied on the talents and skills of the Lyric Consort, an 8-voice, usually a cappella group down in the Scranton area. They're all good, dear friends, and we have done things with them before. So they were the people I had in mind when I decided that I wanted to compose this and prepare it.
Big ball watches here is kind
Let's begin at the beginning. That title, that tune, The Dancing Calvinist.
One of my favorite tunes on this new recording project is one that's been around for a long time. Somewhere in the winter of 1991, it was, I discovered a new melody in the beginning of a new Presbyterian hymnal. New melody for me, it had actually been around since the Reformation, and the composer was a man by the name of Louis Bourgeois. He was one of John Calvin's favorite psalm composers, and pretty much a venerable force behind the old Psalter of the city of Geneva, which was a foundational text. Alas, Louis Bourgeois was imprisoned for changing a psalm tune without a license. That was the charge, and only released on the assistance of John Calvin himself. Changing a psalm tune without a license. He's one of our guys, a jazz musician. And so I took his tune, which has been printed and now found again in the old Genevan Psalter as Psalm 42. And that has become the tune I now call the Dancing Calvinist.
At the heart of this album is Bill Carter's jazz requiem, Lux Aeterna, Eternal Light. It's been years coming together.
The genesis actually goes back 12 years. A friend of mine died of ovarian cancer, and I remember thinking jazz could touch this loss and express it and offer it as a gift, as her life was a gift. But the idea went on the shelf, and then my father died, and then my mother-in-law passed away, and then our friend Nancy's husband, Art, died. And I thought, you know, maybe there's something here. And then the pandemic and all the loss we were experiencing, loss of routine, loss of confidence, as well as loss of life.
Right.
And so the music began to resurface, come off the shelf, and here it is.
The requiem was premiered at the church where Bill serves as pastor, First Presbyterian Church, Clark Summit, Pennsylvania.
With your saints forevermore, for you are gracious.
It's 8 movements, and it follows loosely the way of the traditional Latin requiem, but only one movement is in Latin, the rest is in English. As a Protestant, I'm not bound by Latin rules. A lot of people, when they're going through grief, speak of the paradox of how they feel. I was visiting with a family the other day that had lost the husband of 63 years, and there was laughter in their home. And then they all almost apologized for it, and I said, no, this is part of the human experience. It's the loss and the laughter held together in the paradox, which is why this it's exemplified in this requiem, and it also is part of this larger album, which is full of these almost contradictory, paradoxical joy and sadness held together experience.
I love you.
Papa 7 is not good. I don't like it. No, I agree with that.
Which one?
Papa 7 is not good. Yeah, that page turn.
Okay. All right, let's move on ahead. I loved working with this choir. I mean, they are remarkable. I enjoy their concerts without any other. Oops. I loved working with this choir. I've been going to their concerts for years. Some of them are just dear friends for a long time. And they kind of bring a purity which is a good counterweight to the musicians of sorts. And they are always in tune, and it's wonderful working with great musicians because everybody comes prepared. And then when you work, it's just the fine tuning that makes the difference.
Rejoice and be glad, for heaven has come close to you. Rejoice and be glad, you've been claimed as one of God's own.
Yeah, that kind of thing we can tighten up.
There are familiar passages that come up often in times of loss and in memorial services. And years ago, I discovered that the Beatitudes of Jesus were included on the list of texts that were suggested, and it never really occurred to me to think of that. But what the Beatitudes do is they hold together this eternal, beyond time blessing with those who are in constricted and difficult circumstances. And in that paradox, there's a difference between mere happiness and deep joy. And it's the joy that I wanted to highlight. It is probably the most memorable tune on the whole piece, the 8 movements, and the one that, well, lifts my spirits every time I hear it.
Requiem was a very emotional and very melodic experience for me. The music is just so deep and spiritual and fun at the same time, but it takes you to some places that for myself that I'd never been before, and it also touches deeply in some soulful places that I hadn't expected. And for me, by the end of the Requiem, I was pretty much in tears.
How do you feel now that this is over?
I feel great. I feel gratified. There's nothing quite like putting together in your mind a piece of music and then seeing what your friends and compadres can do with it. That always jazzes me up.
A tight band let loose, serious singers swinging, an audio engineer who built the building and the sound that's given voice to Keith Jarrett and Sherry Miracle, Phil Woods, Leon Redbone, and Presbybop Jazz, led by a pastor whose piano echoes Brubeck. I'll tell you, once this music gets in your ears, it's going to be in your head forever, just like the blessing itself. So rejoice and be glad that you've met the Dancing Calvinist. For CDs, downloads, and to hear the music, go to www.presbybop.com. That's www.presbybop.com.
And it's okay to be passionate.
Each of the tunes in the album has its own context of shadow and light, of night and day, of rest and dance. Rhythm, in other words, given beat and breath by jazz musicians of the highest regard. You'll find this music expressing the profound credo that grace, as does light, abounds, no limits, like jazz.